Melissa.
And I'm Tony.
And we are the Soultry Sisters. We're a community-based organization that empowers women to live healthy and creative lives in North County, San Diego, and recently, DC.
We curate events, workshops, mixers, and meetups centered around women's arts, wellness, and sisterhood.
Our mission is to empower women to live vibrant and shine bright through creative expression and conscious holistic living.
Our vision is to create a safe space that provides women the arts and wellness resources that are affordable and accessible.
So far, we've partnered with Dancing Soul Boutique, Village Rock Shop, Carlsbad Village Yoga Co-op, and nonprofit organization Leap to Success. To find out more information about us and to sign up for our future events, visit SoultrySisters.com.
You can also find us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Soultry Sisters.
We hope to see you soon. Hey, Soultry fam. How are y'all doing?
Hey everyone. So welcome back to our weekly Soultry Hangout. So we're on YouTube live today. We always like to check in with everyone and share where we're tuning in from and what we're sipping on.
Yes, welcome. So I'll start off. I am tuning in from San Diego, specifically Oceanside, and I am sipping tea out of my California mug.
Nice. So I am tuning in from Washington, D.C., and I'm sipping on some tea that I have here. I'm still waiting for it to cool down. I'm excited for today's hangout. So May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So we have a whole hangout dedicated to honoring our Filipino heritage and sharing some insight on why AAPI month is this month, why we celebrate and all those things. So yes, I'm wearing one of my Magahaga Rising t-shirts. So our friends Chloe and Francesca, they are the co-founders of Magahaga Rising. So they're based in Guam. And so then I'm also wearing some earrings. Oh, you can't really see them in this light. But they're made by the Barcina sisters, also based on Guam, and they're sisters. So we enjoy all of that sisterhood as well.
Yes, I'm also rocking a Magahaga Rising t-shirt, and it says the future is Famaloan, and that means the future is female in Chamorro.
Yes. So we're bringing all of the AAPI vibes to our session today.
Yes. So a few announcements before we get into the our talk today. We wanted to remind y'all that our Summer Solstice Arts and Wellness Festival is coming up in June 24th through 26th. And up until May 31st is where you can get the early bird special. So we definitely wanted to get that out to y'all to remind you to make sure to go to our website, SoultrySisters.com, to reserve your spot. We only have 50 spots for attendees. This festival, our intention is to make it intimate, and we hope that everyone leaves feeling connected not only to our community, but to other members.
Yes, so limited space is available. It is in Village Rock Shop, so where we started one of our first partnerships with Xenia, the crystal shop there, and she's expanded her space, and our Soultry community has expanded, so we're really excited to have our festival with you all based in North County, which is our hometown area. So we're really excited about it. If you have any questions, definitely message us at our Instagram, so at Soultry Sisters, or you can email us, and you can find that on the link in our bio or in our website. So definitely let us know if you have any questions. But again, the early bird special ends in 2 days. So get your tickets now because they're sliding scale. We also have a special code for BIPOC folks. So if you identify as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, you have a special pricing as well, because we really, at the core of us, we really value accessibility and affordability. So we really wanted to make sure that our festival was doing just that.
Yes, thank you for sharing all that, Tony. And now we're going to be talking about celebrating AAPI Heritage Month. So, if those of you who don't know, Tony and I are Filipina. Our mother, Evangeline Soultry Mama, is from the Philippines. And today, we're going to be sharing a little bit of some wellness and healing practices that have been passed down to us from our mother as well as our ancestors. And we really wanted to ask y'all, what does AAPI Heritage Month mean to you? So let us know in the chat if you are celebrating this month, and if so, what are you specifically celebrating? Let us know if you're a part of the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Let us know in the chat.
Yes, we can't wait to hear from you all. And this live will be up on our YouTube channel later after. So even if you're watching the replay, definitely comment below as we go along for today's live.
Yes, this presentation, our hangouts are always interactive. So even after, when you're watching the replay, we read your comments and we do respond.
Yes. So for me, AAPI month is really just about learning more about our heritage. I feel like there's always new things to learn, whether that's like our cultural practices, our food that we make, history. I find like learning about Filipino history is always interesting, especially since we're Filipino American. Like to learn, the history of the Philippines is very important. And then recently, since I'm in my herbalism journey, I've been asking my mom like different ways she uses or she knows of using some of our indigenous like Filipino plants and herbs and things. So it's nice to get that direct insight from our mom. Because if you know her, she's not always vocal about these things. But then if you ask her a question, then she'll have like a long list of answers. And I'm like, you never talked about that. So yeah, as I get older, I'm trying to use these times of like awareness and these honoring awareness months to reclaim and like just look into our own culture and to uplift it and things like that as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tony. I also look to AAPI month not only to celebrate like our cultural background, but as well to learn about other Pacific Islander and Asian American cultures. And so for me, this month, I saw that at Miracosta College, the Pacific Islander Cultural Group, they were featuring and interviewing a Pacific Islander centered theater company that's based in LA, and they're called Tieda Productions. Because when you say Tieda, like it's a like in a Islander accent, and they tell stories from the many different, like from the Pacific Islander diaspora. And I learned so much. And like they were talking about how theater is a way for them to like preserve their cultural practices by sharing them in stories and I learned so much from seeing a perspective of, because if y'all don't know, I'm also into musical theater. I'm a theater artist, a live artist based here in San Diego. So for me, I wanted to not only learn more about my culture, but learn about like AAPI leaders in my, I guess, my industry, in the theater industry. And like out of that curiosity, I was able to learn about theater productions. And now I'm like looking forward to, I'm following them on Instagram. I signed up for their newsletter so I can attend some of their events, because I really loved that when they tell a story from a different, like, because in the different like islands, like in Micronesia and Polynesian islands, they don't always speak the same dialect. And what was really cool to learn, how they will learn the dialect of the story they're trying to tell, which is like different than like Western theater. Western theater just makes everything English, but for them, they really take the time to learn that island, not only their culture, but their language. And they will ask ancestors for permission to tell the story. And I was like, wow, like that's such a cultural reciprocal practice that like in Western culture in the theater, they don't do. It's very colonized in the Western culture of like, I'm gonna take this story and make it better. And I just love the reminder through learning about Tierra's practices, how intentional they are. So for me, that's how I was able to like learn more this month.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because even the Philippines has like numerous dialects within one
Right.
country. So it's like, yeah, not even just different countries and different cultures speaking together, but even within one has so many
Mm-hmm.
differences. And even the Philippines in itself culturally is so diverse too between the different regions, because some are more like island based regions,
Mm-hmm.
or like water, like really close to the water, like
Or the
fishing and things like
mountains.
that. And some are more in the mountains. Some has a colder climate, some is like really warm and beachy. So yeah, it's just even in the Philippines, like from where our mom is from and her family, it's so different. So yeah, that's why it's just so interesting to learn more. And then especially the different island cultures in the Pacific as well, is so diverse too. And that's what we also wanted to highlight, that it is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, because in the US it's usually lumped together, but the Pacific Islands have their own cultures, their own things that they bring to AAPI Heritage. And so we wanted to make
Mm-hmm.
sure there's the distinction as well, because if you're not familiar, Asian American can include like Chinese, Korean. It can also include
Southeast
like South,
Asian,
yeah, Southeast Asian. So it's like Indonesia, things like that. And then there's also South Asian, like
Vietnam.
Indian. Yeah, so it's like very diverse. So that's just Asia or what's considered
Yeah.
Asia, right? And then Pacific Islands is like Polynesia. So you can think of Samoa, you can think of Tahiti, things like that. And there's Austronesia and Micronesia and Melanesia as well. So, and Guam falls in Micronesia. So yeah, it's so diverse. We're not even going to get to
So
all of that.
no.
But yeah, if any of you are just, not familiar with any of that, we welcome that. We're still learning. But yeah, we did want to shed light on that. There's so many different diverse cultures and nations within AAPI.
Yes. I also wanted, before we get into our PowerPoint presentation, Tony, and can you help me remind me? We went to Long Beach recently, and we went
Mm-hmm.
to what is it called? The
The
museum?
Pacific Island Cultural Museum. I forget the
Yeah.
exact name, but it's
Yeah.
in Long Beach. If you look up Pacific Island Cultural Museum, it's
Hmm.
there. It was really nice, and it's a really quaint museum, which I prefer actually, because you're able to get to know the curators there. You're able to get to know the different exhibits that are coming. So when Alyssa and I went in December or January, they had this exhibit featuring all Chamorro artists, so artists
Hmm.
from Guam. And so I was super excited to check it out, because I just love Guam. If you don't know, I lived on Guam for 2 years, and I was working there. And so I got to know the island. I have so many friends still on the island. And so going to that exhibit, because one of the co founders of Magahaga Rising, Francesca De Oro, she was featured. She had some
Hmm.
fashion pieces featured, part of the collection. And the curator there, she knew my former supervisor, Bernie. So it's just a small world, honestly, but especially when it comes to Guam, it's small. And so that was awesome to see Francesca's art. And then there was
Hmm.
different types of media
Hmm.
and art featured. There was like dance film, there was sculptures, there was like poetry writing, there
Texture,
was
like fabric art,
like textiles, paintings, so many different things. And there was a live, or the artist in
artist in
residence was
residence.
there doing their art. So you can see in the process, works in progress. So that was really cool. So it was unique because that's the first exhibit that featured all one culture, so all just
Hmm.
Chamorro artists.
Hmm.
Because the curator was sharing with us that usually they feature a bunch of different cultures
Hmm.
in one exhibit. So that was really cool to see. And again, since it was a smaller museum, they got to walk us around, talk
Hmm.
about each artist, talk about the work, share, answer any questions we had. So it was really special to go there. And anytime I get to talk about Guam, I'm really happy because I loved it there. And so it was nice to feel connected to the island again. and to see the museum. So if you all are able to, definitely check it out. And there's a few other museums in that area too, so you can make like a day trip out of it.
Yes, I shared the link to, it's called Pacific Islander Ethnic Art Museum. So I shared that link, and I also shared Tieta Productions link. So definitely check them out. They're both near the like Long Beach, LA area. So you can make a day trip and go to both places. Go there before you see a show. So yeah.
Yeah, so that was really nice. And yeah, just to support your local artists and things like that. Or if you're, on social media, you can look into these organizations that we mentioned. You can see if they have, virtual showings or things like that. Because hopefully there's different ways that you can support even if you're not in the area too.
Yes. So I'm gonna go ahead and share our screen. Let me go ahead and take this down. And so today we wanted to share with y'all like the theme of this year. Can y'all see this pretty well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And so we wanted to share, oh, there you go. I'm just doing a couple little things here. Boop. So the AAPI 2022 theme is advancing leadership through collaboration. And I'm going to share this quote. When you have diversity at the leadership table, the magnitude of what you can accomplish is enormous. You really expand yourself in their horizons to have something creative and innovative. And this was from the Federal Asian Pacific American Council. And so they decide the theme, I think, every year. And we thought this was really fitting because Soultry Sisters is a arts and wellness collective. So we are a part of the Advancing Leadership Through Collaboration, and we are Black and Filipina. So we really wanted to highlight that this year their intention is to highlight folks who are in leadership positions and just sharing with everyone to think about how are you in community and collaborating with AAPI leaders across the board.
And I think when we think of leadership too, for us as Soultry, we think of it in like a decolonized way. So leadership does not have to be just like the boss or the CEO or whatever, colonial mindset would make a leader to be. For us, like a leader is just, someone who's taking, initiative, who's taking action, who's stepping up to, lead their community to better, outcomes with like health, well-being, or all across the board, right? So that's how we also define it. And then collaboration is really big for us at Soultry. So we've started ever since 2019 when we started in January that year. Collaboration was at the forefront and the center of what we do. And 3 years later, collaboration is still very important to us. And even from the beginning, we've collaborated with different BIPOC arts and wellness leaders, but especially AAPI ones as well. So that has always been the root of what we do, is like honoring our own culture as we do our work in the arts and wellness industry. So I think that's super special about Soultry, is that like these different corporations, they might have, a month where they feature it, but to us, that's all year round. And that's what we see in the different AAPI organizations that we work with as well, which we'll talk about later on today, which we're excited about. But yeah, so it's just something to think about. The theme, I think, is really important, and for everyone, who's watching to, reflect as we go on.
I also wanted to share, Tony, that the how we embed our culture in Soultry Sisters is like Soultry Mama. We are an organization that has a multi-generational community. So we have people ranging from young, like teenagers, all the way up to our mother's age and older. So that's something that is culturally specific. Like for a lot of, like, for us, our Filipina family, we're very multi-generational. Like birthday parties has all ages all the time. Like whether it's birthday party, a graduation, or a kickback, like it's always all ages welcome. So for Soultry Sisters, that's how our culture has impacted the way that we run our organization, is that most of our, if not all of our events, are geared towards multi-generational women. of color. So that's an example of how like it's just embedded in who we are. And we also always we want you to go away with something, whether that's eating a snack or having like a treat or something that was passed down to us from our mother. So a lot of the practices that we share, a lot of the customs that we and traditions we do in Soultry Sisters have been passed down by our mother.
Which is really important. And yeah, it goes into why is it important to celebrate API heritage? And because a lot of times in society, especially in the Western countries like the US, it overlooks the value of the AAPI community and their contributions. And so to celebrate this month is to create an awareness of the diverse histories of Americans, again, like we like to center, is from across the Asian continent and also from the Pacific Islands of Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. So we talked about that at the beginning of today's live. And again, that's what we really wanted to emphasize. And we celebrate AAPI change makers. And we want to reflect on the people who've made an impact in our own lives. So not just like bigger orgs that you might just hear about, but ones who we're actually in community with, and to learn more about AAPI stories. Like Alyssa mentioned, just this month, how she got connected with a new org. That's what we really emphasize here is the stories. And also just talking with your own family members or your friends who are AAPI. And so, like I said, this month I asked my mom, like, oh, how do you use XYZ plant? So those stories, especially in Asian American and Pacific Island cultures, a lot of our histories are passed down through storytelling. So that's important too. It might not be a history book that you can check out, but if you can talk to your elders, that's really important. And I feel like I've seen that throughout the diaspora as well.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Tony. And also, we want to throw this question at y'all again. What does AAPI Heritage Month mean to you? Tony and I shared our stories with y'all earlier, so we're just also asking y'all to share in the chat what that means to you.
Yeah, so let us know in the chat if you're watching it. And again, you can put also in the chat any AAPI organizations that you are in community with or that you align with their work. So maybe we can learn of some new orgs and be in community with them as well.
Yes. So today, as we're focusing and celebrating AAPI Heritage Month, we're going to be focusing on wellness and healing. So to start this conversation, we wanted to ask y'all, our community, how do you define wellness and healing? And when I think about, when we're thinking about family, heritage, traditions, can you think of a time where you first were introduced to a wellness practice, a healing tradition? We're gonna be answering that question for ourselves during this live, but we wanted to just think, when's the first healing practice that was given to you when you were maybe sick or when you needed some emotional support? So let that kind of reflect on that for a moment.
Yeah, as Soultry Sisters, like if you all have been in community with us, you probably already know how we define like wellness and healing. But for us, it's the total, mind, body, soul, which is super important. And really just asking yourself, like, what do I need right now to take care of myself? And then through reflecting on that, usually you can find your own definition of what that means. So it can shift, like for us, it shifts, day by day, week by week on like what is our priority or like what we're going through. But really at the root of it is, how are we taking care of ourselves? How are we taking care of our families, our community, the collective? And as we reflect on that, that's usually how we get to, okay, then these are the things that we're going to prioritize to make sure we are well and healthy and healing. But something I wanted to highlight that in the AAPI community, so among a lot of Asian cultures, Pacific Island cultures, the collective and the community is super important and is like an essential part of someone's health and wellness. And I think that's different than Western culture, which is really individualized. But with AAPI culture, the community is really important. Elders are very important. They're seen as,
Mm-hmm.
the leaders of the community, like sacred knowledge carriers of the community. And so that's something that we bring into our Soultry community as well, is that we really care about and we prioritize our community, the collective. Like when we define soul care, it includes collective health, because the health of me influences the health of Alyssa,
Mm-hmm.
influences the health of the next person in our community, and then vice versa. And so, in order for us all to be collectively well, it's also important that each individual is taking care of themselves too.
Yes. One thing when I reflect on this question that I noticed that I used to take for granted, but now don't as an adult, is our mother always asking us how we were and how she did that. Her temperature check, her check in to us was like, "Did you eat?
Yeah.
Did you eat? How did you sleep? What do you need?" And she always focused on tending to our basic needs, which when I was
Hmm.
young and I was feeling like I was like, yes, I ate, of course. But now as an adult, I'm like, I
Hmm.
wish someone would remind me, did I eat? Because sometimes I forget.
Yeah.
So it's like also knowing that like part of wellness is making sure that we have our basic needs. And that's something
Hmm.
that at a young age, I thought was a silly question to ask if I ate and ask if, certain basic needs were met. But now as an adult, I'm like, those are so essential. Nowadays, I do ask myself, did I nourish myself? How was my sleep? Like I asked myself those questions
Hmm.
as a check-in. And now I'm like so grateful that our mother asks us those questions every day.
Yeah, which is so important. And also, it shows how food is also a core element to like our well-being and our collective well-being in our like Filipino culture. Like that's how we connect to each other. That's how a lot of us connect to our culture. And so I think it's an important element of that. And when I went to the Philippines, I was there a couple of different times when I was part of Rotaract Club. Our sister club was based in Manila in the Philippines, and something they would say, like, whenever we leave a gathering is "inaka," and that's like take care. And so, yeah, it's like also just a part of just casual interactions. You're always like saying, like, oh, take care to the other person, instead of like goodbye. Like their word is like take care. So I think that's
Yes.
nice too to think about. It's like, okay, like everyone is kind of more in the mindset of like, okay, how is everyone being taken care of, right?
Exactly. Um, so thank you for sharing. We look forward to reading your comments in the chat. And so today we're going to celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islanders who have dedicated their lives to improving the health and healing industry. The people and organizations that we are highlighting today are among many that inspire the work that we do as Soultry Sisters. And so here are a few that we want to mention today. We have Magahaga Rising. We mentioned them earlier. We're rocking their
Yeah.
t-shirts. And then we have Heal Up, or healing. We have better healing. What's it called? Being
Being
better.
Better with Brittany Ellers, and it's a holistic physical
Hmm.
therapy organization.
And then we have Filipina on the Rise, a woman empowerment organization, just like Magahaga Rising. And then The Thoughtful Beast, which Trixie focuses on mental health awareness. And fun fact, Trixie has Asian American affirmation cards. And I actually have a deck.
Hmm.
It's in my car right now, so I don't have it to show y'all, but definitely check out their page, their Instagram, because their affirmation cards are intentionally made for people who identify as Asian American.
And so with Magaga Rising, we have their t-shirts, of course, that we do, but on Guam, if you're on the island, they do a lot of on the ground work there too. So definitely check them out if you're on Guam or in that area to see like what they're doing with the community, because they're always doing something awesome.
Hmm.
And with Brittany Eller with Being Better, she's based in San Diego, and so she has a new physical therapy office. So if you would like to be a client of hers, she works on like pelvic health. And she works with a lot of women of color as well. Definitely check her out in San Diego. And Trixie's also based in San Diego as well. So yeah, like we said, we are in community with all of these wonderful organizations. And put in the comments any other AAPI orgs that you'd like to name and celebrate. Another one that I love is Herbalaria. So that is an indigenous Filipino herbalism brand. So she does different herbal tinctures and things like that. And she has like guava leaves and things that we'll talk about in a second. And she recently just did a cohort of an in-person herbalism class called Halamanism. I'm not pronouncing it right, but essentially like indigenous herbal practices of the Philippines. She was training a cohort of them in the LA Tongvalan area. And I would love to eventually take one of her courses, Lynn's courses. She's amazing. I've taken an online herbalism course with her. Not a course, it was like a webinar that I took, and it was awesome to learn about the different indigenous Filipino herbal remedies, just like how you can use like guava, soursop, how rice is sacred. So many of those things that in Filipino American culture, like we use, we eat, but for me growing up Filipino American, I didn't always know the like healing properties of it. So Herbalaria is a great channel to look into. She has a YouTube channel and Instagram, and she will explain the different ways to use like everyday items that most Filipino households have and how you can use that for healing.
I shared their website on our comments. And so feel free to check that out. I also want to share a fun fact that Magahaga, Being Better, and the Thoughtful Beast have been collaborators with Soultry Sisters. We've done women's wellness events as well as mental health events with them. So we definitely appreciate their leadership and the contributions that they have made in the wellness community.
Yeah, so share below with us if there's any other AAPI health and wellness leaders that you'd like to name and celebrate. We're always looking to, connect with other orgs and to learn about the work that they're doing in their communities as well.
Yes. And after being able to highlight some awesome folks that we are in community with, we really wanted to take the time to ground down into what we do here at Soultry. We talk about soul care, we talk about taking care of self, and so we wanted to talk a little bit about the importance. So to start out, we wanted to ask y'all, what does soul care mean to you? We ask this question quite often on our lives. And the reason why we ask this question is because this meaning can change. It can change at any time, daily, weekly, monthly. So let us know in the chat when you hear the word soul care, what comes up for you? What does it mean for you currently? For me, what soul care means to me currently, since we are heading into the summer and the sun is staying out longer than before, to me, soul care currently means getting as much time as I can, soaking in that vitamin D and being outdoors.
Yeah, I've really liked being outside in nature recently, especially because in the DC area, it's been getting warmer, which is nice. So yeah, just being outside, enjoying stillness and like being okay with just like being at home and like resting and not doing like 7,000 things. So that has been nice for me these last 2 weekends. And then also like food, like enjoying food, nice meals with some of my favorite people and like people close to me. So that has been how I've been taking care of myself.
So let us know in the chat what it means to you. And then we wanted to share what soul care means to Soultry and in the umbrella of what we do. So soul care is the holistic practice, an approach to nourishing our mind, body, and soul. It helps us to maintain our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and emphasis on collective health. And we also emphasize the importance of radical soul care because it's important to preserve, protect, and heal as a community. So when we think of the word radical, we think at the root. And at the root of everything in this world is relationship. So our relationship to ourselves and our relationship to others. So that's what soul care means. How well are we being to ourselves and how well are we being to our community and our environment?
Mm-hmm. And a quote that we love sharing by Angela Davis is anyone who's interested in making change in the world also has to learn how to take care of themselves. So here at Soultry, we believe everyone in our community are change makers in their own capacity. And so it's so important to take care of yourself. So if you think of a cup, pouring into yourself before, so you can, once you pour into others, you have something to give. So we're really emphasizing that as Soultry is always taking care of yourself.
Yes. And so now we want to get into talking a bit about some Asian American and Pacific Islander wellness practices that we wanted to highlight because for a lot of people when it comes to wellness, sometimes wellness can be looked at through a Western lens. So spa days and spending money and all that. But we wanted to highlight practices that one are accessible and also come from the AAPI community. And some of these practices you may be familiar with. We have yoga and we have gua sha and guava leaf smudging. And we're going to go into more detail. But just to think about what are some wellness practices that you might practice that stems from the AAPI community. Let us know in the chat if you can think of any.
Yeah, so with yoga, you might be familiar with, yoga, like the postures and things like that. So yoga is an ancient Indian practice. So that's part of the AAPI community. So there's different, roots to yoga. There's also Kemetic yoga that's rooted in Egypt, but today we're talking about ancient Indian practice of yoga. And so, yoga, like even an ancient Indian practice, was the practice of connecting the mind, body, and spirit. And ever since its creation, has been linked to social justice and collective liberation. And I got my yoga certification in this past winter, so winter of 2021, and that was like the root of when an Indian yoga teacher came to talk about the history with us. That's what she was emphasizing, was that even at its core, it's about social justice, and the whole Western practice of yoga has taken that out of the practice. So when people think, like, I know in the pandemic, there was a lot of like white yoga teachers that were like, oh, just kumbaya. And no, that's not a part of the yoga practice. Like, it has roots in social justice, it has roots in being yoke. So to yoke, right, is to connect mind, body, and spirit. And so that's an essential core element. So if you reflect on your own practice, or if you know others who practice and are like dismissive or try to do spiritual bypassing, that's not yoga, and that's not the ancient Indian practice either. And you might be familiar with the asana, so the physical yoga postures, like you see the figure here on our slide doing like dancer's pose, right? That's just one of the 8 limbs or the 8 elements of yoga. I won't get into all of that, but there's other elements of yoga that talk about, connecting to the divine. There's other elements that talk about healing the spirit, things like that. And so it's not just about the physical body, but the physical practice is important because it allows you, like when you move your body, that mindful movement, it allows you to be able to sit still and meditate to connect to the spirit. So it's all encompassing and it's all connected, but it's not the only standalone thing. So also, if you are a yoga practitioner, if you dabble in yoga every now and then, to just think about it, like when you're doing the practice, like, are you only doing it to lose weight? Are you only doing it to look flexible? Are you only doing it for like superficial reasons? Because at the core, yoga is really tied to spirit, connecting with the
Mm-hmm.
divine, whatever the higher power you believe in. So yoga is also not only tied to Hindu culture, it's just a practice that connects you to the divine, whatever you define that
Mm-hmm.
as. So you can be any religion and practice yoga. So that's just some, I guess, myth busting
Yeah.
facts of
I,
yoga.
I think people need to hear it. People need to hear it,
Yeah.
especially people who are part of the wellness community,
Mhm.
because it's important to, when we talk about being intentional, part about being intentional is knowing the root, being radical, knowing where something
Mhm.
stems from, knowing the cultural relevance, being aware of the stem of something, the start of
Mhm.
something. So I think for me and my wellness journey is part of my wellness journey has been decolonizing my mindset and questioning, where does this
Mhm.
really come from? Is this, and then part of our journey of understanding and decolonizing our wellness, we were able to find out about Kemetic yoga, which is
Mhm.
attached to um our African diaspora, our and so to me, like that's just an example of like when we're doing these wellness practices, to just really ask ourselves, are we aware of the root of it? Are we honoring its, if it is sacredness? Are we truly respecting where it comes from? Because that all, if you think about vibrations and all that stuff, it does hit different when you are aware
Mhm.
versus I'm just doing it to, like Tony said, lose weight or to wear yoga pants. It's another level. We
Mhm.
also
Yeah,
yeah.
and I was gonna steal some things about yoga. I was gonna say yoga essentially, you don't have to be at a yoga studio. You don't have to even have a yoga mat. You don't have to have
Mhm,
yoga pants or anything. It's just the practice of connecting with your mind, body, and spirit. So that could be laying out in the grass and being very present and mindful, taking that in as you just sit down and find stillness. We can call that meditation, and that's also a part of
mhm,
yoga. It
mhm,
could be, moving to your favorite song really intentionally and mindfully. So it doesn't have to look like the figure here on the slide. It doesn't have to look like what you've seen, right? It's just whatever you do to connect your mind, body, and spirit. So that's why I like to share with people too, because now that I do teach yoga to people, they're always like, oh, I can't do this, or I want to do X like position, but how do I do that? And I'm like, well, what is your end goal? If your end goal is to connect your mind, body, and spirit, you don't even have to do those postures. Like
yeah,
in my
mhm,
personal practice, I rarely
mhm,
do all these like advanced things. Like it's
mhm,
really for me connecting to my breath, being
mhm,
mindful, getting clarity. Sometimes I set intentions, and then as through I'm practicing, it's like I'm trying to hear those answers come to me from the divine. So
mhm,
it really is just that intentionality, that mindfulness, finding that
mhm.
stillness, like doing the movement to let out that like energy so then you can find stillness. So that's also what I want to leave everyone here about
Yeah.
learning, like decolonizing yoga. Like it doesn't have to be this Western look, right? It's just whatever you do to connect with your mind, body, and spirit. And that's yoga.
Yes, thank you for dropping those gems, Tony. I think it's important because as Soultry, we want to make everything accessible. And part of making
Mhm.
something accessible is representation, seeing yourself,
Mhm.
seeing your culture being a part of the bigger picture. And so often in wellness, it could be so centered on Western culture or even
Mhm.
whiteness. And so part of this conversation is to highlight other ways to practice yoga other than what you think you might have to do. So thank you
Mhm.
so much for that.
Yeah, and also, like, if you are someone who loves to do yoga and you're like, "Oh, now I'm realizing that the spaces I'm in are not, healing or allowing me to take care of myself," like, look into, AAPI and, BIPOC leaders in the wellness space for these different practices that we're gonna share because there are people out there who,
Mhm,
have a decolonized way of doing these
mhm,
practices. So definitely look into who's in your community who do these practices in the way that we're sharing, and hopefully
mhm.
you'll find someone out there who you enjoy, or you can be connected with us
Yep,
and
we're one
find
of
it
them.
that way. Yeah.
Sultry is one of those communities you can tap into for sure.
Hmm.
Next, we wanted to share gua sha. So gua sha, some of you have made,
Hmm.
I've seen this I don't know if Instagram has been listening to me speak of this, but ever since me and Tony were talking about this presentation for today, I've seen nonstop all of these gua sha like sales on Instagram. It's like, no, I already have mine. And so if y'all aren't familiar, gua sha is one of the oldest recorded forms of traditional Chinese medicine treatments and healing techniques in the world, y'all. Like, it has been fact checked. And then also, gua sha means to scrape away illness, and it involves using a tool such as the stone you see on the screen with a lubricant to scrape and rub the skin repeatedly in one direction. And the aim is to activate blood circulation and to dissipate blood stasis.
Yeah. So gua sha, I guess if you're wondering, okay, what does this mean? Essentially, is a self massage technique. And you can use tools like what's like showed, and I have one too. And they come in different stones as well. So mine is jade, but you can also use like a wooden spoon or things like that to also do the motion of the gua sha, which is the self massage. Yes.
Yes. I also wanted to clarify that there's two types of practices. There's the gua sha of the body, and then there's what you can do for your face. We're talking about the one that you do on your on your body, but they can be used both ways. I just wanted to clarify for those of you who are watching, just so you know.
Yeah, and there's like with traditional Chinese medicine that also can go into, pressure points like acupressure that can go into, your meridians, different points in your body. So I would definitely encourage everyone to look into that, because when you're self-massaging as well, if you look into those acupressure points or the meridians, then that can also help with like your blood flow, with relieving tension and things like that. Because when I used to see an acupuncturist that followed traditional Chinese medicine, she would gua sha me different times, especially like with my shoulders that were tight and stuff. So that really helped relieve that tension. And yeah, I like to do it self massage whenever, I have any like tension and pain area. And then I like to do both sides of it. So then it relieves, because my acupuncturist is like, oh, don't just do the side that hurts. She's like, you can also do the other side, because sometimes the pain or tension might manifest on one side, but to do both to even it out. So that's just like a tip if you are wanting to try gua sha. Yeah.
Yes. And we've also, in some of our sustainable wellness workshops, we've also shared tips on how to be able to create this sustainably. So if you do not have the beautiful jade stone that Tony has, you can also use a bottle cap, a cap of like what is it called, Tony? A jar, as long as it's a rounded edge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's different healing properties with using a certain type of stone, but we also, in Soultry Sisters, talking about accessibility, also promote using things that you have.
Yeah, so you can use a reusable jar lid. Like I said, you can use a wooden spoon. There's different things that you can use that you have access to in your house. And also for different body parts, different types of tools might be best used as well.
I also wanted to share this because this is just perfect for our background. So, we're Filipina, and we make rice like every day. Like, this is a part of our culture. We usually eat it with most meals, and for that reason, we have a lot of rice spoons. And so when I was dancing for a dance company like all the time, I actually had a rice spoon in my dance bag, and I would gua sha my feet as a warm up. So I would put like lotion, I would gua sha my feet to get my feet ready for rehearsal. So that was a practice that I used in my daily life when I was dancing full time on a company. So that's a fun fact. Like, I was using literally like a rice spoon. And I was like, what's that? I'm like, it works.
Yeah,
and we have so many.
Yeah, so it's just use what you have. And look into it, because there's different techniques like to the self massage for different areas of your body that will help relieve that tension or any pain, and just reintroduce that circulation of the blood. Because also traditional Chinese medicine, like blood circulation is also really big. So look into that as well, because that goes into so much more. I'm into all this holistic wellness stuff, so that's why I get all these random. But like different ailments that you might be going through, whether that's like painful periods or, back pain, neck pain. Like you can look into that. And with traditional Chinese medicine, there's usually some sort of remedy for that specific thing that you can find. Yeah.
Yes. And last but not least, we want to talk about bayabas,
Yeah.
aka guava leaf and guava leaf smudging.
Mhm.
And so, herbalism and plant medicine is a common holistic medicine practice in the Philippines. And Tony is our family herbalist. I will say it. She might not claim it, but we definitely turn to Tony and a sultry mama to help the family continue to holistically heal. And specifically, smudging is a healing practice where dried leaves of a plant, not just sage, y'all, not just sage, are burned. And for us, for our Filipino culture, we burn bayabas, which are dried guava leaves, and they are tied to an ancient Filipino practice that uses the practice of smudging to cleanse negative energies from the environment. And this is very similar to the indigenous Native American tradition of the practice of burning sage.
Yeah. So essentially, the wellness practice is smudging, and culturally
Mm-hmm.
specific, you can use different herbs. So yeah, like Alyssa said, Native Americans here in the US use white sage, and then in indigenous Filipinos use guava leaves. But you can use many other herbs like mugwort that grows more
Mm-hmm.
abundantly,
Mm-hmm.
different things like that to practice smudging. And essentially, that's just the smudging is how you release that energy, how you cleanse,
Mm-hmm.
so you can light your whatever smudge stick. So this has my guava, this has some lavender in it, some rosemary,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can just tie it up. So that's how it is. This is what I got one from Herbalaria. So the Filipino herbalism org we shared earlier, but you would just light this. And with guava leaves, you more want like a dish under it because small pieces might fall down. And then you'll just like, is it waft? I forget the
Yes,
action, but yeah,
waft.
you'll go
Yes,
like
waft.
this around the
Get
areas
away.
you want to cleanse, right? So like if you're cleansing your body, you'll go like this. If you're cleansing like a thing, you're like, okay, let me cleanse this cup of tea like this. And then you as you're smudging, you're, releasing things, letting that
Mm-hmm.
go. And then you can also smudge to bring in intention
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
So that's the practice. And yes, we suggest everyone to look into culturally specific herbs and plants that you can use that are sustainable and that are rooted in your own culture. So you can ask your family, you can look up online. But yeah, we know that now the Western culture and the Western wellness
Mm-hmm.
industry like has taken white sage and misappropriated it, and now it is endangered, which is unfortunate. And we
Mm-hmm.
don't want to encourage everyone to keep doing that. So that's why, we found something that's part of our culture, and we encourage everyone to find something that's a part of your own culture. And even if smudging, let's say smoke, like really bothers you, a cleansing practice, you can use water, you can use, intentions as you're,
Mm-hmm.
moving your hands around your body, and you just say an intention to
Mm-hmm.
yourself. There's all types of sustainable ways
Yes.
to cleanse.
Yes.
Sage is not the only
Yes.
thing that
Yes.
cleanses, it's the intention behind
Yes.
it. So that's what we
And
wanted to share too.
yeah, that's why we like, for instance, when we talk about wellness, sustainability, and we're talking about soul care being about the collective health, we don't just mean people, we also mean our environment. We also
Hmm.
mean the trees, we also mean the animals, all those things. And so when we think about these wellness practices, we also like to take the time to know like, am I replenishing myself and also like being mindful of what I'm taking from the earth, what I'm taking
Hmm.
from someone energetically. And so I also wanted to share, like, if you're like Tony was talking about smoke, because our sultry mama does not like smoke, but if you feel like you can't afford like sage or crystals or all that, you don't even need it. If you want to bring energy in, even this movement and in Soulscape, we talk about using movement as healing. So the act of bringing something into you, and then the act of pushing something away. So
Mm-hmm.
Tony was doing that, and I was like, oh my gosh, you have to mention that for Soultry, we
Mm-hmm.
also do an embodiment practice where we're using what we have, which is our body. Even the thought, like Tony was saying, even the thought of bringing and calling something in, and even
Mm-hmm.
the thought of calling something out is indeed just as good, or if not better, of a wellness practice than buying
Mm-hmm.
all these soul care tools, soul care kits.
Exactly, yes, because a part of decolonizing wellness, and a lot of these different AAPI practices is, knowing the root of them. And at these practices that we just shared, the root is not capitalism, it's not consumerism. So our indigenous Filipino ancestors way back when were not like, oh, let me go buy these, packs of guava leaf smudge sticks. So, there's just guava growing abundantly, and then they know that it has healing properties. So then they
Mhm.
created, they probably would just gather it together and then cleanse around, and that's it, right? So think about that as well when you're thinking of your own cultural practices, that like your own ancestors and elders most likely did not commodify them in this way.
Right.
So yeah, that's not what we're sharing. We're sharing more of like that curiosity element to just share our knowledge and share what we've learned with you all, so you all can then also do your own research and
Mhm.
find what's meaningful to you. Because also, in my herbalism course, with hood herbalism, my teacher Bette always, if a student asks a question like, oh, is this wellness practice like something I should do, she flips the question back to the student. She's like, well, does that feel right to you? And she's like, ask your elders, ask. And elders to us in the class is also our plant ancestors. So if you're saying, like, let's say you find out that mugwort is like really, connected to your culture, go to the mugwort plant and then ask the plant itself, like, can I use you for my cleansing practice? Like, can I use you as part of my healing ritual? And the plants will answer you.
Mm.
The environment will answer you. So that's something
Yes.
that's also like decolonized, is like, connecting back to our relationship with the
Mhm.
earth, connecting back to our relationship with our elders, um, and to just ask them these questions. And, people might not have the answers for you, but you'll have the answer for yourself if it feels right for you. And again, that's what we shared at the beginning. Like, our soul care practices feel good for us, but it might feel something else might feel better for you, right? So
Mhm.
always find out what is best for your own wellness and healing journeys. But we hope you, learn and like research these things. And we hope by these conversations that we're contributing to decolonizing wellness and healing, because, that's at the root of what we do in our
Mhm.
personal practices. And we just like to share that with you all.
Yes. And our final question we'd like to leave y'all with is, what wellness practices have been passed down to you from your culture and community? This is not an answer you have to have right now. We just hope that this celebration of our AAPI heritage can inspire you to get curious about your culture, get curious about who is in your community that is an AAPI health and wellness leader. Get connected with them, get connected with us.
Yeah.
And with that said, getting connected with us, we wanted to remind y'all that we are having our summer solstice Arts and Wellness Festival at the end of June 24th
Mhm.
through 26th in San Diego, specifically North County, San Diego, our hometown. If you're like, wow, I really want to get in community with them, I really want to support an AAPI led org, well, Soultry Sisters is
Yay.
one of many, and we hope you can join us. Make sure you're getting that early bird special that ends on May 31st. If you have any questions, you can go to soultrysisters.com and email us at connect@soultrysisters, or follow us on social media and DM us. Even shoot a comment on this video. We'll be happy to answer your questions, and we hope to see you at our Arts and Wellness Festival.
Yes, and if you can't physically come to our festival, you can also donate. So you can
Yes.
go to our website and we have a space there for you to donate to, pay it forward for other folks who are needing assistance to join our festival. We have a scholarship. So if you need financial assistance, we have a scholarship from our donations, and we have our sliding scale, and then especially for BIPOC. So definitely check that out. Reach out to us if you have any questions, and we hope to see you all there.
Yes, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see y'all
Yay.
next time.
Bye.
Bye.